in the data collected in products from around the world from a wide range of sources, including moorings, research cruises, and fixed-time series stations. We welcome all scientists to early observations through the portal. It's quick, easy, and allows greater visibility for your work. Additionally, GOA-ON offers members scientific mentorship, scholarships, and hands-on training through the peer-to-peer program. If you're interested in joining this program as a mentor or mentee, visit the peer-to-peer webpage and enter your information into the application form. GOA-ON's newest resource is a webinar series, which was established following last year's OA Week. We welcome your inputs on what topics you would like to hear about in future GOA-ON webinars. If you have any ideas, or if you'd like to contribute to this webinar series as a presenter, please send us an email to secretariat@goon.org. Over the next 10 years, GOA-ON intends to go even further. GOA-ON has become involved with the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which will run from 2021 to 2030. This Ocean Decade will provide a common framework to ensure that ocean science can fully support countries to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. GOA-ON is proud to announce that our proposal, known as OARS, or Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability, was recently endorsed as an official UN Ocean Decade program. The OARS Decade program will build on GOA-ON's existing work to further development OA science by enhancing capacity efforts, increasing observations of ocean chemistry changes, identifying the impacts on marine ecosystems, and providing decision makers with the necessary information for mitigating and adapting to OA. GOA-ON would also like to bring your attention to the 5th International Symposium on the Ocean in a High CO2 World. This conference was initially scheduled for September 2020, and like many other events over the last 18 months, this event was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The symposium is now scheduled for 2022 and will bring together researchers, decision makers, and other stakeholders to share cutting-edge ocean acidification science. We hope everyone listening today will visit the symposium website to learn more, and we invite everyone to stick around until the end of this webinar to see a promotional video from the Symposium Steering Committee. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the speakers for this session of OA Week. For the Africa Hub session, we have Drs. Naira Shaltut, Roshan Ramasur, and Sheikh Sharif, the co-chairs of the Africa Hub. We will be having presentations on the new marine observations of carbonate chemistry variability in ocean acidification state in Northwest Africa waters, the Gulf of Guinea marine ecosystem in a changing ocean, overviews and challenges, and ocean acidification monitoring in Kenya. And without more delay, I'm going to hand this over to Roshan Ramasur, who's going to give an introduction to the Africa Hub. Go ahead, Roshan.
Okay. Thank you, Trevor. So just on behalf of my co-chairs, Naira Sharif from both North and West Africa, I will just give you a brief introduction of OA Africa. And as you can see, we have 3 speakers. So more or less, I would like to mention that OA Africa, it consists at the moment of 28 countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean around West Africa, the southern part of Africa, which borders the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. Then we move to the East African region, where we are involved in the Indian Ocean region. So we have approximately 208 African scientists working towards our goals, where we've been discussing in our policy brief funded under the IAEA OA ICC. So more or less, I'll just give you very briefly what we are doing. So OA Africa aims to provide a perspective on the status of ocean acidification research on the African continent and propose solutions to the emerging threat of ocean acidification, and the scope and findings of past ocean acidification research in Africa that will allow scientists to build on past research. International agreements which may serve as a framework for driving scientific objectives. And we aim also to look at potential vulnerabilities which can indicate future areas to prioritize monitoring, remediation, and adaptation. So at the moment, we have 10 ocean acidification projects known to date, supported by IOC, UNESCO, WAMSA, and also IAEA, OAICC, the Ocean Foundation, and of course NOAA, OAP. And we already have 32 recent or active ocean acidification monitoring locations in East Africa. So you can see that ocean acidification research is still in its infancy, but we are trying to update or equip with capacity building in trying to have covered system monitoring equipment with data and engage our scientists in research using various sensors and so on. So up to now, the literature review of ocean acidification research from 2010-2019, we found that we just have 51 out of close to 5,000 published scientific articles. So we are still upgrading, improving our capacity building, and of course we need to. This is an area where we need to grow our research capabilities. So throughout the International Research Corporation and West Africa, we have had the EA Nansen program, where Mohamed will be talking about that, Sheikh Sharif as well involved in all these research cruises. And obviously there has been the research efforts in Egypt, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Seychelles, and South Africa to gather data on carbonate system. And we also know that we have Northeast Atlantic from Canary Islands to Gibraltar and the Gulf of Guinea, the Benguela current system, and Southwestern Indian Ocean, where we've started doing monitoring projects. So as you can see, there are countries in East Africa like Kenya, Mauritius, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Seychelles, North Africa, Egypt, and Morocco. They are conducting robust observations during periodic cruises in the Northwest Atlantic and Egyptian coastal waters, and Tunisian, Algerian scientists also involved in ocean acidification. So with the start of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, countries have an excellent opportunity to address SDG target 14.3. And international agreements such as the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, they all provide a framework for African nations to consider ocean acidification as part of a larger mandate to protect the coastal waters, conserve biodiversity, sustainable manage fisheries, and address climate change. And one pathway for doing so is via the United Nations Environmental Programme, Regional Seas, the Barcelona, Nairobi, and Abidjan Conventions, and along with international organizations, they may present the best path forward for multilateral cooperation to build domestic ocean acidification research programs across Africa. And we can use tools like marine protected areas or ICZM initiatives as essential solutions. So coming back, our synthesis, and we understand that ecological and socioeconomic consequences of ocean acidification in African coastal waters is extremely limited, and many countries are not yet able to engage in ocean acidification research. This is rapidly developing field in need of support from national governments, international organizations, and global scientific collaborations. Scientific networks and capacity building efforts continue to be developed through cooperative programs and regional convention bodies. So this approach will help African nations combine their strength and knowledge centers to build collaborative, ambitious programs that meet SDG targets and protect coastal communities. So a summary of our proposed actions: Pan-African cooperation between national authorities and stakeholders impacted by ocean acidification, regional and interregional technical cooperation between African coastal nations, environmental monitoring programs to conduct long-term observations, strengthen the growing community of African ocean acidification researchers, better outreach and communication on ocean acidification and the threat it poses to stakeholders through educational programs designed to inform and prepare. Focus research on socioeconomic targets, likely commercial relevant marine species and ecosystem engineers vital to sustaining food webs, build regional bioeconomic modeling tools, and update policies, regulations, and standards to recognize the role of human activity affecting ocean acidification locally and globally. So throughout our steering committee, we've already worked on a white paper under the IAE OA ICC, and we're also developing the policy brief for OA Africa, which is coming very soon. So we hope that Africa will contribute towards resolutions to COP26, and this will indeed be very beneficial to the ocean acidification community. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'll introduce Dr. Mohamed Idrissi. Maybe Trevor will come in.
I think Trevor was going to introduce him. I just don't hear Trevor right now.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had a connection issue. Moving on, thank you, Dr. Ramasur, for that introduction of the OA Africa Hub. We encourage listeners who are in the African region to consider joining. Now we're going to move on to our first presenter. Dr. Mohamed Idrissi is going to be presenting on new marine observations of carbonate chemistry variability and ocean acidification state in Northwest Africa waters. Dr. Idrissi is an observational oceanographer with more than 10 years of expertise. He works on topics ranging from biogeochemistry to sediment dynamics to oceanography. Also, he leads observational programs for ocean acidification in waters off Northwest Africa, performed on the ship of Dr. Fridtjof Nansen, DFN, with the Nansen program, and with team leader Dr. Melissa Shiresi of the scientific team 10. So now I'll hand it over to Mohamed. Okay. Next, Dr. Sheikh A. Sharif and Falilu Adekunbi will be presenting to us on the Gulf of Guinea marine ecosystem in a changing ocean, overviews and challenges. Sheikh Sharif is a PhD candidate offering environmental planning within the School of Natural and Built Environment, Queen's University, Belfast. Sheikh holds a Master of Science degree in Maritime Affairs, specializing in marine environmental and ocean management from the World Maritime University in Sweden. Sheikh also holds a bachelor's degree in oceanography and fisheries from the University of Ghana and an associate degree in electronics engineering from the Stella Maris Polytechnical College in Liberia. He is presently a co-chair of the OA Africa Network and co-organized the Blue Ocean Conference in Liberia in 2019, highlighting OA Africa work. And I want to remind the audience that you can make questions anytime to the presenters in the chat box and to direct your comments specifically to the person in question. So write your comments, put their name in the chat. And now let's hear from Sheikh.
Hi, everyone. It seems like we've been having some technical problems on Trevor's end of things. So I'm going to try to restart the second presentation. Just please bear with us. Thank you for your patience.
And thank you, Shek, for that great presentation. Okay, just wanted to apologize again for the technical difficulties. We'll be moving on to the next presenter now. Okay. And now presenting Dr. Eric Okuku, who will be presenting on ocean acidification monitoring in Kenya. Dr. Okuku is a principal research scientist and KMFRI with over 18 years research experience in biogeochemistry, ecotoxicology, involving extensive application of ecological tracers to assess coastal and marine ecosystems. He is currently coordinating a monitoring program to strengthen the national capacity for ocean carbon chemistry and its impacts on coastal ecosystems and human livelihoods. He has organized several trainings, including a course on OA experimental setup, from the scratch to results, approach to evaluate the impact of OA on seafood safety. He has also been a key in coordinating the sharing of data and metadata with IOC UNESCO in Kenya. So, without further ado, I'll pass it to Dr. Okuku. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're a little short of time, but I think we have time for some questions. I want to thank all the speakers for working with us. And at this time, all of the speakers, as well as the co-chairs of the OA Africa Hub, can turn their cameras on and their microphones on when they're speaking. And to the audience, this is a great time to put your questions now if you haven't already. So please join us with your questions, and reminder to our panelists to silence your microphone if you're not speaking. Send your questions in. I think we already have some great questions here. Let me take a look. Okay, so I'm going to read the first question. This question is just wondering how to validate the dissolved O2 measured by CTD. I believe this is for Dr. Juicy.
Hello?
Hello. Yes, I hear you. Go ahead. The question, did you hear the question?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Okay.
So you said how to validate why and how. So actually we measure the sort of oxygen and salinity with continuous, like with an instrument. So like, let's say every second. So to make sure everything is correct and it's right. So sometimes we have to go to one station and do it, let's say manually, like with the chemical way. So that's why we validate sometimes the sort of oxygen and salinity just to see if the instrument, everything is right and correct with it.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. We have a comment and a question, and this goes to, I think, all of our speakers. Just request if you answer very briefly because we're short on time, but one of our audience says, so exciting to hear about your work happening in Africa, and says, hello, which marine resources are most at risk in your respective countries? And anyone who would like to share, just turn your microphone on and do so. Go ahead. Any of our panelists, if you want to mention what marine resources are you feel are most at risk in your country.
Naira, you're on mute.
Okay, any response? Jack, do you have anything to add? Oh, Naira, I see your microphone's on now.
Okay. I'm Dr. Naira Shaltut from National Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries, Egypt, regarding the most vulnerable species in Africa. Fisheries sectors highly impacted, for coral reefs, highly impacted, corallina, algae, also for corals and fisheries is impacted, which affect the economy. As you know, that fisheries is one of the big economic contributors in GBA in Africa.
Thank you, Dr. Shaltut. I think we have time for one more. Any other questions?
We actually have, and we have another half an hour, Trevor, if people want to ask more questions. The session doesn't end for another 35 minutes. And it appears that some of our speakers might be having trouble unmuting themselves.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Thanks, Carrie, for that correction. Let's see, speakers, let's see if you can turn on muting and speaking with us.
So a question just came in for, once again, this is for all the panelists. And maybe we'll start with Roshan here, but we know that GOA-ON has just kicked off the ORS program, this 10-year initiative. And I was wondering what role you see the Africa Hub playing in the ORS program, and what you hope the ORS program could provide to the researchers in the across the African continent.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's quite an important aid. You can see that there's a lot of capacity building which needs to be done, and especially in terms of funding, in terms of equipment, in terms of finding solutions to very vulnerable ecosystems. So I guess this is a very important step for OWS to put forward to make it recognized at the United Nations level that ocean acidification is a really important threat to coral reefs, marine ecosystems, shell fisheries, especially in the African waters. So that's a very important step, because we're already having microplastics, and now we're talking about the pH, and then it will be oxygen, the next level. So these are important steps at the policy level. At various conventions and special COP26 coming in, and that's where the policymakers, we have to make them have this message that ocean acidification is it's a very important threat towards biodiversity. So more or less, this is what I expect. It's very important. I mean, it's quite true, and I really thankful to Newton and Steve, who've been involved in crafting this letter to the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Mohammed, do you have anything to add? And then we'll go to Naira after that. Okay, Naira, how about you? Anything else to add?
You mean regarding to ORS?
Yes.
ORS program? Okay. I think it will be a well-identified program that will provide more facilities for capacity buildings and more inclusion of different countries to work together in projects on a regional and regional basis between three regions, countries in three regions, and will provide a framework for decreasing the gaps and decreasing the lack of the information. Also will provide well-identified methodologies for OAS, for ocean acidification research. In addition, it will, I think, decrease most of the challenges that we face in Africa for OA research. So it will be a good opportunity for all countries and for real researchers to be included. Thank you.
We have more questions now. So let's go to Patricia was asking Eric, how do you address the effects and synergy of multi-stressors? She also says it's great to see the progress of OA science in Kenya. Eric?
Just come up again. I didn't get that.
Yeah, Patricia wants to know, how do you address the effects and synergies of multi-stressors in your work?
I have a problem with my sound. I'm not getting the question well. Patricia wants to know what?
Okay. Asked, he asked, how do you address the synergies and effects of multi-stressors? Eric, do you hear me?
I can hear you. I can only listen to the part of how do you address energies and effects of
multi-stressors.
Of multi-stressors.
Yes.
If I got you well, the synergies of multi-stressors, I know that at the moment we have an ocean that is warming up. It is dirty because we have a lot of nutrients that are being discharged into the ocean. And now with the new child in the room, which is OA. So the kind of experiments that we should move into are the multi-stressor experiments. And again, this is an area that, if I can speak for the rest of Africa, this is an area that we might need support as a continent. Already working with a single stressor, we need more or less 12 pH computers, and these equipments are not very cheap. If I have to add another stressor, which could be nutrients or a temperature, variation in temperature, or sea surface temperature in that case, then it is more or less requiring more than 3-4 times the kind of equipment that we have, the facilities that we have in place. So as Africa as a continent, we might need support in these areas. And I want to confirm the stressor experiment.
Yeah, that's a really important message to get across the technical challenges as well, doing this kind of research in a multi-stressor context. Another question for you, Eric. From the presentation by Eric, would we justify that OA has minimal impact on marine resources in Kenya and to an extent the Western Indian Ocean? I'm going to write that in the comments too in case you weren't able to hear me well.
I want to make it clear that we only did an experiment with one organism so far, which is a Telebraria. Organisms respond differently to stress. And in my presentation, I didn't mention that in the initial stages of the experiment, we saw some impact. And I did allude to a fact that the sensitive stages of an organism, which is the larval stage, might be differently impacted as compared to the adult Telebraria that we used. So I want to confirm that even though for Telebraria we saw some recovery, the other organisms will respond differently to pH reduction. And in the beginning of my presentation, I did mention that in Kenya we rely heavily on coral reefs. This is where the fish are harvested from or are fished from. And indeed, I'm very sure that coral reefs will respond totally different to pH changes. And I want also to add that currently we are experiencing a lot of coral bleaching due to rise in sea surface temperature. So we are having an ecosystem that is already stressed. And if we add another stressor, which is now reduction in pH, then we expect more or less a complete collapse in our fishery.
Thank you. Libby Jewett wants to know from all of you if anyone will be attending the COP in Scotland. That's COP26. We need your voices there. So anyone going so far? Any of our speakers?
Nope. Not.
Nope. Okay.
Nope.
Well.
Nope.
Okay. Another question to Eric. For acidification studies, how important is it to consider DIC?
I want to confirm that for us to come up with the carbonate, the whole carbonate chemistry system, then in practice you need at least two species. So in our case, we used pH and total alkalinity. I also want to confirm that if you have capability to to determine the DIC and any other species of carbonate chemistry. Then from there, you can be able to more or less understand the whole of the carbonate system. DIC is important. We just developed capacity. We are more or less launching it. So in the next few months, then we should be able to report measured values for DIC, total alkalinity, and of course pH. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like Desiree Fiogue wanted to ask if she could share her email with you all, and we can make that possible after the session. But I'm going to say to all of our audience right now that the best way to get involved and interact with the presenters here, as well as the panelists, is by joining the OA Africa Hub. And you can do that via GOA-ON if you're not already a GOA-ON member, by going to goaon.org and signing up. And in the options, you'll see that you can select a hub that you are interested in joining, and we will put you in contact with that hub. You can also go to the OA Africa Hub website, and we're going to put that in the comments in the chat so you can see exactly where to go. Any other questions? Another question for the Kenya monitoring programs, very popular at the moment. What time, Dr. Eric, within your monitoring program, at what time, hot or cold, do you collect the samples? Did you catch that? For the Kenya monitoring program, at what time, hot or cold, do you collect the samples?
Is that for Eric? Is this question for Eric? Or it's just a general question?
I think so. However, if you want to step in and answer, yes, but if you care to contribute your perspective, Naira, that's totally fine.
If I got the question well, sorry, I lost my internet for a few minutes. If you could just repeat the question again.
Yes. Within the monitoring program, at what time, hot or cold, do you collect the samples?
Yes, so at the moment, I can give it a try, Trevor, can I? Yeah, at the moment, the monitoring program that we have is we collect samples on a quarterly basis, so after every 3 months. And that is why I'm glad. So these are spot samples. They are not continuous measurements. So you go get your samples, do analysis. So it is the situation as it is at that time of samples collection. And I'm really glad that GOA-ON is launching a new program, because we are hoping as the countries in Africa that we might be able to build capacity for continuous monitoring. So in situ sensors are some of the equipments that we'll be glad to receive during this program, so that the monitoring data that we have is not a spot data, but a continuous data over 24 hours, over a week, over a month for a particular place. Thank you.
Thank you. And another question on this, on your research. Yes?
May I add some points to this question, please? Regarding the biological experiments, such as the experiment that Eric presented in his valuable presentation, and well-distinguished results he attributed in his presentation, that when we are running biological experiments, we try to mimic all the conditions for the organism to just be similar to the conditions of each organism in his environment. We just put the organism in similar condition, such as its environment. So it doesn't matter if it's in cold and hot water, because we adjust the pH the temperature of the water and the condition in the lab just similar to the condition in the experimental condition, just similar to the condition of the water. Okay, that's the first point. Regarding the samplings, and this is one of the challenges that we face in Africa. For most of the African countries, it's lack of resources, lack of information. Also, thanks for the IEA and GOA-ON for Ocean Foundation and NAWA for providing capacity buildings and funds. Also for WIOMSA for projects, funding projects that makes it very possible for African countries, most of African countries, to go through cruises and to go through ships for sampling collection. So it's we go through these sampling cruises during summer, winter, whenever it's go, and these conditions is interpreted. The data collected is interpreted based on the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was interesting to learn. Any other questions from the audience or from our panelists?
Can you add one more comment?
Just to add on some of the new projects which are coming in, it's like the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, NORAD, in collaboration with IEC UNESCO, are funding projects in 6 countries like Comoros, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Madagascar, Nigeria, and Tanzania. I think these are expansions which are happening in the forthcoming month or coming year. So that's quite quite good news for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, I believe you were about to say something. Okay. We have a question on what are the most visible impacts of ocean acidification in the Morocco region for Dr. Drisi.
Say again, Trevor, the question?
Yeah. The question was, what are the most visible impacts of ocean acidification in the Morocco region?
Right now, we can say so. So we have to wait till we have more data, more monitoring. We just have like 2 years, 17 and 19. Unfortunately, 2020 we didn't do it right. We stopped somewhere, so we didn't finish what's going on in Morocco. We will see till we finish, at least like as a time series. Then we can say what kind of impact of oceanification in our environment or for the whole Northwest Africa.
Okay.
Trevor, it looks like Shek is also trying to give some input. Shek, do you hear us?
Yeah, Shek's unmuted.
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to also say a very big thank you to the Ocean Acidification International Cooperation Center, Coordination Center, for supporting the drafting of the white papers for the Africa Hub. And they gave a home-based assignment to support the development of these white papers for the 3 regions, North Africa, East Africa, and West Africa. It is important that as co-chairs, we highlight this during this very important meeting, to just say a very big thank you to partners that continues to support research and awareness on ocean acidification across the region. We are still working to have the last version of the white paper out for distribution and possible publication. So hopefully before the end of this month, most of our partners will have that, including the policy document that Trevor and Rushan spoke about. Hopefully that will also be out. And we are hoping to get chiefly the Regional Seas Program, especially the Abidjan Convention and the Nairobi Convention, chiefly involved with this, especially to ensure that the awareness goes down to the policy level and ensure that local administrations help support the coordination, research, and capacity building of OA research across the continent. So many thanks again to all of the partners involved with this.
Thank you, Shek.
Thank you so much, Shek.
And we do have another question for Eric that has come in. It says, would the study conducted offer a national policy to address OA in the context of climate change and marine pollution?
I want to confirm that we've only carried out an experiment with one organism. And if you remember, I indicated that the condition factor was declining. For us, an edible organism condition factor is the ratio of your weight to your growth, also length. So if this is declining, then it means that the nutritive value could be going down. So we have samples that we are still analyzing to see if the nutritive value, including proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates, are declining. And once we have this concrete data, and of course for some other organisms, then we want to put a very strong case for the government so that they can intervene in the case of OA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I go back
Okay.
and answer one question? The question was for Eric about the hot and the cold water. What time?
Yes.
Can I do that? Okay.
Yeah.
The question was about what time exactly hot or cold. I think when we cover area, with the vessels, we don't choose the right time. It's cold or hot, doesn't matter. So if we go in the winter time or summertime or hot or cold, doesn't. So what we do. So anyway, for the alkalinity or pH, the pH, we measure the pH at 25 degrees. Doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. So we do this measurement at 25 degrees exactly. Okay. Did I
Thank you for
answer
that
the question?
clarification. Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. Any more questions in the audience?
Yeah, I think there's another one that's come in, and I think this could be for everyone or anyone who wants to answer. How can we choose the best sampling sites for OA monitoring?
Here you talk about the coastal or like large in the sea. Large,
it doesn't
it's
specify, so either.
the sea. It doesn't matter. Like offshore doesn't matter, but in the coastal area, it will be matter a lot. If we choose like some places we don't have a lot of currents on it, or we have this kind of current circulation, it's good. So it depends. We have like good oxygen or not. So we have to, sometimes we have to choose well the area which we're gonna monitor a lot. Because this monitor is not gonna be for one time. It's gonna be for like, let's say, I don't know, 10 times or 15 times or like for whatever. So we have to check exactly this area and what on it, then we monitor this area.
Okay, may I add to my colleague Muhammad, what he said, that because we have a limited resources, we don't have a continuous cruises. Actually, the monitoring for ocean acidification or any other parameter for marine environment is going in a well-identified program. Unfortunately for Africa, we don't have enough resources to have the continuous cruises every month or every 3 months, or either every season. But whenever we have these resources or such a funded program or project, we go to sea for open shore area, we go to this area monthly or seasonally, and areas for sampling or screening. So it doesn't matter, such as my colleague said. But when we need to study the impact of multi-stressors area, the polluted area, area of fisheries, one of the hot continuously, we should go for sampling continuously, and these areas identified based on the water quality and the conditions of this area. That's how we choose the area for sampling. If one of my colleagues add, it will be my pleasure.
Yeah, I just want to add because I mean, very often you need to go to areas where you have low freshwater inputs, usually 35 parts per thousand. I mean, usually this is the difference between coastal and open seas, because usually this equipment, the sensors are mostly for open seas like 35 parts per thousand, where they're being calibrated. But now, if you have a freshwater, it puts down the pH. I mean, runoff or ground submarine runoff discharge or eutrophication or rainfall. And I mean, it's all, I mean, these are factors or stresses which have to be taken account. That's why we're talking about coastal acidification or ocean acidification. So for the beginning, I mean, most of the methodologies which have been developed mostly is to do with salinity. I think 35 parts per thousand. When it comes to lower salinities, we need to account for that. So I think mostly in open waters, if you're upwelling where pH is low, I know it's all to do with the fresh water. Yeah, I don't know how you take this in your response. Especially mauritius, we have lagoons where you have a lot of freshwater seeping in coastal lagoons, seeping from a volcanic island, moving. It's a diffuse kind of source of water, which is affecting waves and increasing eutrophication in the lagoons. It could go further offshore as well. These are conditions that we have to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
you.
It's very interesting.
There's just one final
Go ahead,
clarification, which has come in for Eric. Oh no, sorry, not Eric, Shek. Shek, under which partnership is the white paper of ocean acidification being written?
What do you mean? Who sponsored or supported the drafting of the paper? Katrina? Hello? Hello?
It's actually, the question is not,
Yeah.
It doesn't specify Czech, but maybe if you could just discuss what are the different partnerships that you have and how these white paper, at least the West Africa white paper, has been written.
Okay, the paper has been we started drafting this like 2-3 years ago, and that was chiefly led earlier by, especially for the West Africa one, by Patricia Zaviri and myself. But we have other West African scientists ranging from Nigeria, Togo, Senegal, the Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, that are all involved with the drafting of this. So that started 2 years ago, and to facilitate and expedite this, recently, like 6 months ago, the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center asked to help expedite this by supporting a home-based assignment, like a consultancy for 3 persons, and that was Nera, Roshan, and myself, to help to fast track this, since we are the lead authors for each of these white papers. So that's what led to where it currently is, and we are working with, of course, Trevor to facilitate and coordinate all of these, and hopefully over the next week, I think, I don't know whether North Africa can, I stand to be corrected, but over the next week or so, we should be finally submitting the final version. I think we just have one last corrections to make. But it was actually through the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center under the leadership of Peter Swazinski that supported the final drafting and to ensure that the papers are published. So we have the Future Earth Coast that is also working closely with we have the Ocean Foundation, and then of course I know the Global Ocean Acidification Observation Network is going to be part of this, because we are going to be distributing these for final circulation soon. So I think basically that's what, and the essence of the white paper is to just promote the research and of ocean acidification across the continent, and especially to policymakers in simple terms, or like the impact of ocean acidification, what it is and what currently is being done on the continent, and who are those partners, what needs to be done, responsibilities of, for example, governments or responsible institutions, because international partners, as it stands, cannot do everything. So as we all know, in Africa, we have 38 countries that are the coastal countries or island countries. So we understand that international partners will not be able to provide the support in terms of equipment needs, capacity building, but the government needs to take the lead. That's why we are trying to also work through some regional seas program, like I mentioned earlier, like the Abidjan Convention and the Nairobi Convention, to help support these initiatives. So the essence of the white paper, just to open this up in the wider context, especially to policymakers at the local level, so people understand the current situation of OA, but in context, what are those potential impact and what can be done, especially at the local level, especially with all of these environmental crimes, like deliberate shipwrecking, wrecking or dumping of toxic waste that also intensify the global ocean change or amplify the global ocean change. So basically, that's just it. But the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center has been working very closely with the OA Africa Network to get the final version of the white paper out this week, and also the policy document before the end of the month. But we're doing that in collaboration with the Ocean Foundation and Future Earth Coast.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for explaining all of that. And I hope that answers a lot of questions people may have had. The event is coming to a close now. We are almost at the hour-and-a-half mark. I think if anyone wants to add some final words, you can do so on the OA Information Exchange, where we'll keep the conversation going, or by posing your questions on Twitter, questions and comments using hashtag OA Week 2021 and tagging at GOA-ON, which will let the secretary know that you're having this conversation, and we can see all of that. Okay, and now thank you everyone for attending this session of OA Week 21.
Thank you.
We are going to, before we sign off, we're just going to share a short video from the steering committee on the High CO2 Symposium, so you can stick around for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.